Good afternoon. This is Matthew Lindsay with Precision Home Group here in Anchorage. Today, we are talking to you about real estate. So we're going through a series on commercial real estate. We started off kind of introducing you to commercial real estate as a whole. We talked about multifamily, we talked about office space, we talked about industrial, retail space, mixed use, all of the above, dug deep into them, and kind of gave you an intro. So we started breaking off from there and doing mini series on different types of commercial, really just sinking our teeth in, going into the strategic analysis model that we talked about before. So we started with retail, and now we're digging into multifamily again. So this is our third day on multifamily, and today we're talking specifically finances, financials, how to look over the financials, what to look for, how to break down the deal so that it makes sense for you, right? How do I do that? Where do I go? What information do I need? And how can I do that myself without trusting and having to rely on other people? Now, you should have a trusted team that you're doing this with, right? You should have the lenders who are working for you. You should have your agent who's working for you. But there's no way to double check their work or to confirm whether it's a good deal or not if you don't know what you're looking for. So that's what we're doing today. Today is going to be a quick intro into looking at financial statements, looking at finances, and then we're going to dig deeper into that tomorrow. So today I just want to introduce you to a form I like to call as a cash flow analysis worksheet. Now, we're actually going to drop this form below. We're going to put it in the comments for you, so that you can actually utilize this yourself, print it off, fill it out. What I like to do is actually start looking at this for each different type of property that I may be looking at. If I have clients who are looking at maybe 4 or 5 different properties, they've narrowed their search down, they have certain properties that they want to look at. Well, at that time, we're going to go pull as many financials as we can on each different property, put this together, and see what the numbers say. You know, almost immediately we can cross several properties off the list because they're just not performing. They're not performing, they don't have a history of performance, and they just don't pencil out if they were performing. So immediately you just take, 3 or 4 of those off, you're left with 1, maybe 2, and then you can go into further research on those, right? So cash flow performance, right? Cash flow analysis worksheet. What is this? So I would recommend, open up in another window. You can do it side by side, or just open up this form yourself and take a look at this form as we're walking through it today. So as you look at this form, upper right hand corner, this is going to give you a lot of information about the property. You're going to be looking at the purchase price. Hey, what am I going to pay for this property? We're also going to put in there, what are the acquisition costs? This is something that most people don't even speak about. Most people are like, oh, I just do a down payment and that's it, right? So they're not talking about, hey, what is it going to take to get in here? They're also not talking about the loan fees or costs. What are the closing costs, right? How much additional to that down payment am I going to have to pay? And do I have this money budgeted for? Do I have this money set aside? We're going to take that and minus our mortgage. And what we're going to do is find out what our initial investment is. Now, this is really important as we go into and try to find, hey, what is the cash flow and what are our returns? Because we can take our initial investment and then we can figure that based off of our returns that we're getting, or based off of the cash flow we're getting, and find what percentage of returns we're getting, right? But a lot of people aren't putting those closing costs in. They're not putting all those additional costs in. They're just using that down payment, which is incorrect because it's not just a down payment you're putting into this property. So, getting ahead of myself. So that's the upper right-hand corner. So if you're following along on this form, we're gonna drop it down to our next big category here. It's the mortgage data, right? So when we're looking at the mortgage data, we need to know first and foremost, hey, what type of property is this? Is this going to be 1 to 4 units and we're looking at residential? Hopefully not, and hopefully we're actually looking at some commercial properties. We're getting enough doors where this is actually going to cash flow, pay a management company, and produce income for you as the investor. So we're going to look at the amount financed. We're going to figure in the interest rate for that. Also, we're going to put in the amortization period. So is it going to be a 5-year? Is it going to be a 10-year with a balloon? Or is there a special program in your state, in your city, where you can actually amortize this over 25 years or 30 years? There's programs like that here in Alaska, put out by Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. It's a beautiful thing. You can actually amortize that loan like you would a residential, but it's a commercial multifamily property. Okay? How many payments a year? Typically, it's going to be 12 payments a year, 1 payment a month, right? We're also looking at the periodic payment. How much is that going to be? What's the annual debt service, right? That's what we're trying to get to. Once I get that annual debt service, we can start playing with numbers. I know that with an annual debt service, I can start plugging that in and start seeing what my annual cash flow is going to be, right? If you're just doing this monthly, you're doing it all wrong, and you haven't been doing it for long enough, right? We've got to figure, hey, what does this make? What does this produce on an annual basis? Don't worry about monthly. Should be a concern, but we're going to do all our numbers annually, okay? The last thing is what are the loan fees and costs, okay? We talked about that before when we were looking at that top upper right-hand corner to find our initial investment, but typically that can be anywhere from about 2 to 4% for closing costs on the loan. And then also what we're going to be looking at is, hey, is there going to be a second deed on this? Is there going to be a second mortgage on this? Is someone holding back some? Are you making a deal with the owner, the previous owner who's selling the property and things like that? So we're going to jump down into the worksheet portion of this, okay? So we're going to start with, and this is all to find cash flow, right? So one, we're going to do, what is the potential income? Potential income, what is that? Well, if you have a 30-unit building and every unit rents out for $1,000 a month, well, that's $30,000 a month times 12, and that's going to be your potential income. It's what it could be in a perfect world, in perfect circumstances, and 100% occupied all the time. Does that ever happen? It doesn't. Okay? And if you have 100% occupancy, got to ask yourself a couple questions. One, hey, do I have the best tenants possible? And two, am I charging enough for my rents, right? So we're going to take our potential income, that top line item, and then we're going to plug in our vacancy rate. So if you have a 5% vacancy rate, like Anchorage right now, you're going to take that potential income and you're going to multiply that by 0.95, and you're going to be able to find out what the vacancy rate factored in to the potential income is, okay? So you're going to do that, and that's going to give you your effective rental income. Okay, so we got the effective rental income, and then after that, we have other income. Hey, can you bring any more income to your property? There's lots of different ways you could do that. It could be coin-operated laundry. It could be maybe you charge extra for storage space, for garage stalls, for carports. Maybe you charge more because you have, exterior covered parking in your area, and you offer, hookups, right? For the winter up here, you can plug your car in. Maybe you have cell towers, down in the lower 48, cell towers is going to be a big thing, or antennas, things that people can put stuff on there, a raw station, things like that. Is there any additional income coming into that property that isn't based on rents? Okay, so we're going to factor that in, and then we're going to take the rental income, we're going to add whatever other income we have, and then we're going to find our gross income. So that's going to be total income. It's going to be a big number. Do you get all that number? No, you don't. So we're going to start subtracting from our gross income to find our NOI, our net operating income. From there, we're going to take away, things like utilities, right? We're going to take away all the operating expenses, right? We're going to do all of that. Some people will actually take reserves out underneath NOI. I like to put it above NOI, okay? I like to put reserves, set aside a certain percentage for the building, because that's going to give you a true net operating income. It's going to give you some true numbers. People who put the reserves in below that are just trying to inflate that number a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna get our net operating income is gonna be our gross minus all of our operating expenses, and I'm gonna throw in their reserves as well, based on the property. Now with that, we're gonna get our net operating income, and after that, here's where that mortgage comes in. Here's where that debt service comes in. It's gonna be that monthly payment times 12 gives you the annual debt service. So we're gonna take that annual debt service, we're gonna minus that so that we can actually know, hey, what are we cash flowing, right? So we're gonna take that out, and then we're going to be looking at any other expenses after that. Hey, is there a management company? Is it big enough to have the management company for the leasing commissions, stuff like that? Honestly, this form is set out like that, but I would actually plug that into operating expenses, okay? So we're gonna put that in the operating expenses, and then we're gonna minus our debt service, and then we're looking at taxable income, cash flow before taxes. So this is where you can take the cash flow before taxes and figure out what your initial investment is in the upper right-hand corner of this form. And then you can divide those two in together, give yourself a percentage or what your cash on cash return is. So super simple. I know I went through that pretty fast. Hey, we're gonna break this down tomorrow. We're actually gonna talk about each line item, what actual expenses go into each one for operating expenses. We're gonna talk about potential income versus actual income, and we're gonna break down how to figure out what that debt service is, okay? So we'll see you back here tomorrow. Make sure you print out this form. Make sure you print out this form today so that when we talk about this tomorrow, you can watch us on the whiteboard and you can have that form in front of you and you can actually be inputting all this information so that you can keep track of it, work it out yourself so that you're learning and also doing it yourself, so it's going to solidify that knowledge in you. Join us tomorrow about 12:30. We'll be here talking multifamily financials.